Hello, my name is Tom Carhill. The date is 15th of the 10th, 2013. Now, I first became aware of this information approximately 18 months ago, possibly 2 years ago, probably 2 years ago at longest. But anyway, I was in conversation with somebody I know. I won't give any more details than that, but it was somebody who worked at the BBC, and they were explaining about how what they've been up to in the week or that day, I forget which it was, and they had a real bee in their bonnet about something quite serious that happened there. And what it was is that they'd been filming something, so they were working in I think it was something to do with news programs, or it was one of the kind of current affairs things, and Bill Oddie had been in also filming something to do with some wildlife or something, and they had a real bee in the bonnet about Bill Oddie, and basically Bill Oddie was getting slagged off a lot, like as though Bill Oddie was like the worst thing since sliced bread sort of thing. It's very funny, and I thought this was very unusual because this person was going on and on and on about what a complete dickhead he was and how he ought to be sacked and he should never be allowed to work on TV again. He should have his contract suspended. It was all very, very strange. Now, all of this revolved around a completely minor thing, but at the time, I had a slightly different idea about why they were making such a fuss. Because basically, what happened was he was recording one thing in the studio, and there was an article, and it was something to do with red squirrels on a news section or a current affairs type program. I forget what it's called. I don't really watch TV, but the point is that they called Bill Oddie on and just said, we've got Bill Oddie in the studio. He's the wildlife person, so we'll ask him a question. It was something to do with the reintroduction of red squirrels, and he had like 30 seconds just go, oh yeah, what a great idea. And instead of saying that, this Bill Oddie said something like, no, I don't think it's a good idea because of blah, 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 blah. And of course, because it didn't go along with this, yeah, everything's brilliant, bullshit mantra, it didn't fit in the 30-second time slot very well, because really then they should have had a right to reply, and they'd been banging on about what a good idea it was, and he didn't think that. And of course, if you don't think what the BBC thinks and you work there, get with the programme. It's the BBC. You just talk bollocks, you all just agree with it, and then there's a consensus is achieved, of course, and you never discuss where it actually came from. It's just reinforcement of bullshit, like George Orwell explained in 1984. It's newspeak. It basically deprives anyone who watches it of any thinking capacity, because everything's always decided for you. And of course, if you work there for a while, eventually the idea that you've got a thought of your own, it's just a fucking ridiculous concept. You have no thoughts of your own because you wouldn't be allowed to work there if you did. Anyway, at the time, I thought this ridiculous, outrageous objection to him just saying something, saying I don't think it is because of this and this. I thought it was all to do with time slots, and I thought it was all to do with this managing of this kind of rhythmic drumming in of bollocks into people's brains with the mystique of the Hegelian dialectic, the synthesis and the whatever you call it, the thesis and the synthesis, driving the thinking forward, as Hegel explained how you control the mass by giving them the illusion of two choices and you get them to vote on one or the other, like the red party and the blue party. Right, you're getting punched by the red party. Do you want to be punched by the blue party? No, I don't want to be punched by either party. That's revolutionary thinking. You've got to get punched by one of them. Oh, well, you wanted to get hit by the red party. Now you're getting hit by them. Well, you must like the blue party. You don't need to get hit by either hand. You don't need to get hit by either of them. That's the whole party political system, but it's used for everything else as well. So the Hegelian dialectic, I just thought it was that, and it wasn't smoothly running enough because he put something in place which wasn't part of the two opposing or apparently opposing arguments, which would be sort of like, do we need to get a United Nations approval of this, or don't we, rather than do we need to drop bombs on innocent people and spend all the taxpayers' money on bombs killing people and never get any benefit for the people who pay for the bombs. They obviously never talk about that. So it's either like, do we get this United Nations resolution, or do we go along with America? It's never. So it's never actually a proper choice about any real issue, and that's how it works. And as I said, this has been this has been documented in abundance. And before we even got our political system we have now, Hegel wrote it all down. I mean, it was in German, but it's been translated. And so anyone who just says that isn't the way it works is just an imbecile. So the evidence is all there. It all followed a plan. It was set up a long time ago. But anyway, the point was, with Hegelian dialectic, I just thought it was to do with that. This is the point. Zooming forward a year, something like that. Now, I don't watch the telly very often, and I definitely don't really read newspapers and stuff like that at all, really. So, like, something can go in the newspaper and I just don't know anything about it because I just pay no attention to them. But turns out that Bill Oddie, there's a good reason why they were targeting Bill Oddie, and it wasn't for this more minor infraction, which is also a serious travesty in the BBC. You can get sacked for like thinking and just saying something's obviously, you know, wrong, and you're probably a terrorist or something if you say something the BBC doesn't think. And basically, what it is that Bill Oddie had been reporting, and he said after the Jimmy Savile scandal came out. Obviously, it's wrong to call it the Jimmy Savile scandal because it involves all of them at the BBC because it's a paedophile organisation, and your TV licence is paying for a paedophile organisation to operate and abuse children, and they're still doing it now, and they always will because that's the setup, that's the culture, that's how the entertainment industry works, and the BBC is obviously a government-run entertainment industry, and that's how intelligences work through sexual perversion, stuff like that, using it for blackmail. So it's inevitable. That's what it's run for. It's not run to actually entertain you. It's run to fuck around with your brain. And the reason they get these fucked up people involved is because it's just the way it works. Anyway, the reason that Bill Oddie potentially was getting victimised at this instance was because he said that anybody who said anything about Jimmy Savile in the BBC, despite the fact they all knew that he was a pervert and he was raping all the children, anyone who said anything like that would be sacked. And that the young girls who were getting taken home by, say, the chauffeurs taking them home when they'd been on his show and he'd been raping them, some of them were going mad in the cars, like, you know, screaming and shouting, saying he'd done this, he'd done that. The chauffeurs would come back, say that girl went mad in the car, she'd been telling me all these stories about he's raped her, fucking, you know, I've heard he's done this bit. They got sacked. Right now, he came out and he explained this. So what occurs to me is that they knew that he wasn't like a paedophile minder, and of course because he was quite high up in the BBC and he's kind of an establishment figure as he's an institution, even though he's not probably a pedo like most of the institutions in Britain. He was probably saying something beforehand that they didn't like the sound of, and they thought, fuck, right, so what we're going to do, we're going to kill him. Probably not quite serious enough to kill him. He's a bit too important. We can't piss him off and get him off the telly because he might say something. He might go all David Attenborough on us, or what's the name? Jeremy, the guy with the big beard who doesn't believe in global warming and they don't let on anymore. I forget his name. Anyway, the whole Jeremy Bugle or something, I forget his name. The one with the big beard, doesn't believe in global warming, hardly ever gets on telly anymore. They don't want all of these wildlife people going sort of like turning against them and not agreeing with any of their bullshit. So they had to start demonising him. And this was probably the first opportunity they had to demonise him, because when I think back to it, I'm sure that he's been on the telly saying something about this red squirrel killing the grey squirrels to let the red squirrels in. I'm sure I've heard him say something about that before. So I think what they've done is they've sort of put him in a position so he does something which is a kind of mortal sin in the BBC, which is ruin the little 30-second time slot or make it not all like, oh, yeah, like, you know, just all wankers smiling and laughing and being really false, like the way the BBC works. And they deliberately put him in that position so that there'll be a proliferation of BBC sycophantic, you know, like people who've got no hope to get anywhere else in life. They've signed up, they want to be journalists. They realise they're in the BBC and there's no hope they're ever going to actually do anything of any significance in life. Yeah, they can't do any other job because they've been working for the BBC often for free and all this bollocks for ages. So they're never ever going to go anywhere. And that's what I think, what I actually think happened. They deliberately put him in a position to say something which would be disagreeable. Obviously not disagreeable, but disagreeable in their context of that work, to sort of start demonising him because they were trying to shove him out or make him like a dirty word, like a bad smell, so no one would talk to him, or they'd be like, have to get another job or go on the dole because they can't get any other jobs as they work there. And that's why I think was happening. So I think there's a link between David Bellamy, who I was talking about before. David Bellamy doesn't believe in global warming. Don't see him on telly very often anymore, do you? I think that Bill Oddie was getting lined up for the chop or to be demonised a while ago, because I think that this whole scandal about the paedophilia in the BBC has been waiting to come out for a long time. And for instance, I don't know if you know, but you know the sort of plates. It's kind of like a sandstone building. They've got these sort of it's got a slightly Art Deco thing. Well, it is an Art Deco building, isn't it? The Television Central. And they got a famous paedophile to make all these plates around it. The kind of plates that they stuck down the slabs with the kind of like carvings. Look quite nice, these carvings, and they're kind of Art Deco. I like that kind of thing. But they're all kind of like, I can't remember what they are. They're like men touching little girls and stuff. It's all completely creepy. But you see, obviously, it's because the BBC is run by paedophiles, for paedophiles. It's a paedophile organisation. But Bill Oddie, the Jimmy Savile scandal, and the general BBC being a paedophile organisation, which is, run by paedophilic communist types who, believe in total control. Obviously, it's all type of Marxism. Marxism being fascism and communism, the same thing. It's collectivism, the opposite of libertarianism. They don't want you to be able to think for yourself. They want total control of everything. And to rub salt in the wounds, they want you to pay for your own oppression. Newspeak and 1984, both come up with by George Orwell. He used to work for the BBC. Newspeak was the idea that you'd minimise the language, that you took all emotiveness and all kind of meaning out of all the words, so that the people would be so inarticulate that they wouldn't ever be able to describe their oppression. This idea isn't a new idea. I think it's 200 or 300 years old. There was a plan, I forget who it was who wrote about it to start off with, but one of these control freak sort of institutional families, like the Darwins or something like that, I forget which one it was. They envisaged a time where the poor people would speak a kind of like low English, where they'd be so ignorant because they wouldn't be given the words to use, that they wouldn't ever be able to explain what was actually going on. So it would bring their IQ and their kind of thinking and rational ability would go down and down and down, and it would just pull them down, and they'd never really be able to explain how they're being oppressed. That's what the BBC is doing, and I think anyone who's still paying a TV license, if I gave you a block of gold, would you start hitting yourself on the head of it? Like it's absolute idiocy. You should not be paying your TV license. Paying your TV license is paying for your own oppression and subjugation, and it also funds child abuse, like compensation payments of Lord McAlpine. He's a paedophile. He's a collector of paedophilic art, of Graham Overton's. He sold it all when the paedophile scandal about him came out. He'd already been named in Scallywag magazine, and they were very explicit. They didn't just say he's got a guilty conscience or something. They outright asked him to sue them. He didn't sue them, so why on earth are the BBC paying him out money? And what right have they got to do out of court settlements? And also, interestingly, if we take the step back, in the last few years, lots of their top executives are paid like six-figure sums, and I think something like several $100,000 as payouts when they left, with secrecy agreements attached. So why was this happening? What on earth would you be paying some like basically pseudo civil servant, good for nothing, several $100,000 for, when they were leaving your organisation with a secrecy agreement? I think at some stage in the future we're going to find all this out, and people are going to be like, oh, you're so, there's a lot bent going on at the BBC. I can't believe anyone really watches it anymore. I can't believe anyone pays them a TV license. Thing with Bill Oddie, I bet my bottom dollar that's linked to the fact that he was talking about something he shouldn't have been talking about, of a serious nature, and therefore there was a demonisation campaign against him. I'd be interested to know what you think. My name's Tom Carhill. The date is the 15th of the 10th, 2013. It's getting on late now. But I was just thinking about this, and I just thought I'd put it on there because I reckon that Bill Oddie's probably all right. And I think at some stage in the future, more people will put more things together, because I just heard about this in passing. But sometimes when you find out about something, you hear something and you think, I better remember that, because that thing's important. And at some stage in the future, this information is going to link to something else. I've just got to remember it. And that's what I thought when I heard this. I knew something fishy. It rang a chord. I thought that's important. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Bye bye.